Greetings, Poe Museum patrons, and welcome to the final gallery on our exhibit renovation. This is the Death Room. Technically, it's called A Mystery of Mysteries, but it explores Poe's greatest and final, most enduring mystery. How did he die? And when people come to the museum, that's the second most frequently asked question they have right after, where's the restroom? So here we are to take you back in time to the faces that Poe saw in those final days, the places that he visited. Like this is a piano from the last place he stayed while he was in Richmond before his ill-fated journey to Baltimore. This came from his sister's house, so she would have been playing probably the polka on here while Poe was staying at the house. But wait, there's more. Right this way. This is Edgar Allan Poe's trunk, the one that he carried with him on his final journey, and he left it back here in Richmond. This contained most of his worldly possessions when he died. And what sort of things did he carry? His clothing. And we actually do have Poe's silk waistcoat that came from a trunk of his possessions that his mother-in-law held on to after he died. We have his socks back here, you can't beat that, and his walking stick, which he left in Richmond at a doctor's house his very last night in town. And while he was here, he became engaged to his first fiancée, the one he was seeing when they were teenagers, Elmira Royster Shelton. I've told you about her before. And over here, paired up with Poe's last photo, a tintype copy of the trailer daguerreotype, is a daguerreotype of Elmira. So here they are. It's almost like a nice little wedding portrait there. Except, as you know, they didn't get married because there's no happy endings here at the Poe Museum. We have here the engagement ring that Poe gave her, a drinking glass he gave her, all sorts of relics documenting those final days of their last engagement. Yes, they became engaged right before he died. He died 10 days before he would have married her. And here's some of the pieces, like a photograph of Poe that she owned. And then you have these two weird little heads. These are heads from the crown molding of Poe's sister's house. And for some reason, before the house was torn down, the Mackenzie family, this is her foster family, took these heads out of the crown molding. So you have like two heads in there, which that's kind of nice. But there's more. There's better stuff over this way. In this case, we have a lock of Poe's hair clipped from his head just after his death. Excellent provenance. The guy who clipped this, Joseph Snodgrass, was the one who took Poe to the hospital where he died. And Snodgrass is one of the about 7 people who actually attended Poe's funeral. So this has a story. It's not just a lock of hair. It's a lock of hair with a great story behind it. And then we have the key that was supposedly found in Poe's pocket after he died. And check this, a fragment of Poe's original coffin. And this is where we start to talk about Poe's legacy. And we can't really talk about that without discussing Poe's nemesis, his archenemy, Rufus W. Griswold, the man who despised Poe. So naturally he wrote Poe's biography and portrayed him as a madman, drunkard, womanizing, opium addict with no morals, a really evil, horrible, despicable person whose works you should never read again. So Griswold set the standard. He's the one who created that public image of Poe that we still have today. But now things are starting to turn around. And in the decades after Poe's death, people finally started to honor this guy who originally was buried in an unmarked grave, who people thought would be forgotten, but they started building statues of him. So this room is full of sculptures produced starting in the 1890s all the way up to a most recent one. This is from 2012. It's the wooden maquette for Poe returning to Boston. So this is the wooden model for the statue of Poe that's at the Boston Common, or near the Boston Common. You know what I'm saying. So the artist Stephanie Rocknack entered this in a competition, and out of over 100 different entries, she was the one who had her work chosen. So she had this upscaled into life size, but we got the original wooden maquette, a gift from Susan Jaffe Tain, a huge literary collector. But wait, there's more. So over here we have portraits of Poe, an etching by Edouard Manet. That's the French sort of proto-impressionist painter, not to be confused with Monet, the water lily guy. He's the Olympia guy. And this etching of Poe was done right around 1875 when he was illustrating Mallarmé's translation of The Raven. And beneath it is a lithograph of Henri Matisse's etching of Poe that was an illustration for another Mallarmé poem, The Tomb of Edgar A. Poe. So we've got two great French artists as a reminder that it was really the French who embraced Poe after his death and brought him back. After Rufus Griswold there did his damage, they're the ones who really cultivated Poe and his legacy as a great writer and an artist. And to this day, there's more people paying tributes in different ways. And we see down here more sculptures of Poe, a medallion produced in a limited edition by the Grolier Club, a rare book collecting club in New York. And here's sort of an unusual tribute. Well, unusual for normal people, not for the Poe world. These are bottles of cognac left by the Poe toaster at Poe's grave. This is the guy who started right around 1949, the centennial of Poe's death, visiting Poe's original grave up in Baltimore. Now, not the place he's buried right now. They moved him 26 years after he died from one end of the cemetery to the other. The coffin fell apart. That's how he got a piece of the coffin back there. And this guy would go to the original grave, which is marked by a monument saying this is where Poe used to be. And every year, nobody knows why, he would have a quiet ceremony sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. and leave 3 roses. He'd toast Poe with a bottle of cognac. He'd leave the rest for Poe to finish. These bottles actually do still have cognac in them. You can't drink it, but there actually is cognac in there. And there's a letter that the Poe toaster left about 1993 to Jeff Jerome, who at the time was the curator of the Poe House in Baltimore. And you're wondering, well, how is this guy who's been doing it since 1949 still visiting Poe's grave in the dead of winter, January 19th, every year? It's because it's not the original guy. He passed down the tradition through the family. So there are letters like this one right here says that some traditions must pass while others take their place. The torch will be passed. And that's when the new Poe toaster came and took over. It's a secret identity. You're not supposed to know who the Poe toaster is, but whoever the Poe toaster was passed it down to whoever the next Poe toaster was, who was probably a relative. And this kept on going until 2009, which was a bicentennial of Poe's birth. And after that, the original line of Poe toasters stopped. So we're lucky to be able to have a couple bottles that document that tradition. So that's your little sneak peek of the Poe death room. So be sure to come down here to Richmond to see it in person. And if you can't visit, learn more about the museum online at poemuseum.org or visit all the social media things. And if you'd like to help us preserve precious Poe pieces, like that fragment of Poe's coffin or these Poe toaster bottles, why not support the Poe Museum or become a member at poemuseum.org. And until next time, thanks for joining us. And I'll leave you with more gratuitous footage of the Poe Museum cats doing Poe Museum cat stuff.